And I think we are quick to look at somebody or hear their name or hear their voice
and make a judgment.
You're not black.
Yeah.
Or you're not black enough.
Yeah. Always in my class, I was one of, 5 black children, maybe one of 3. The fact that I remember that and know that just says something.
So I think this whole idea of what does it mean to be black is really deep.
In these spaces where you're judged, it matters. We're back.
We're back. We're back.
It is so wonderful to be sitting here talking with you again.
I know.
Talking to my friend, my sister, my co-mentor, my partner in crime. Well, some crimes, not all the crimes.
We're not committing crimes. No crimes here.
Well, you look amazing.
As do you.
I didn't know we were playing dress up for the podcast episodes.
Back in the day, podcasts used to only be audio, but now we got visuals.
That's true. They can see us.
And
we look good.
And we can see each other.
Okay, so we're going to do a quick fit check. Fit check. Fit check. So tell me about what you're wearing, what you're loving.
Listen, I love this dress. It's one of my favorites. It's by Andrea Iyama. If y'all don't know her, you need to know her. I love this dress. I love the color. I love the vibe. If I was standing up, y'all, it's giving all the hips. If you want to give the body, like this is the dress.
I love it.
So I decided I'd wear something that, it's just giving a little something today.
I love it. The color on you it's stunning. The ruching, the regalness, the royalty. All of it.
Thank
I
you.
love it.
Okay, but enough about me. We got to get to your shoes.
Oh,
we didn't start at the top, but we got to make sure we get to the shoes.
Well, I am in my standard black, so I love wear the very chic color. It's a very beauty industry color. It's a very, if you're a black woman trying to slim color, it's all kind of things. Black is the color.
I love it.
But my shoes, the people were going a little bit. They were a little excited about my shoes. These are
tell us.
Off-white.
Hey,
Off-white. Black designer. I think he came out of Louis Vuitton, if I'm not mistaken, out of that house. It has his own brand. And so, just a little sleek something, little silver color pop.
Little sides, y'all. She's doing it. Y'all not going to be able to see her feet during the whole episode, but let me just say, I'm sitting here looking at them. All of us on the set are looking at them. They are popping.
Thank you. Well, it's always good to look good, especially when you are having the kind of conversations we're having. So we are here again, back for another episode. Tell me how you're feeling about just us getting together and having this talk.
Well, I'm having fun, because I think this is, it's a journey, and just being here and being present for this is, first of all, just beautiful.
Yeah.
And being here with you. There's no one else I'd rather be here with than you. I say that.
Me too.
Just knowing the sisterhood that we've had for all these years. But I think also just being in conversation is very natural and it's very normal for us to talk. But the things that we're talking about are not easy topics.
Right.
And so, to me, it's a beautiful juxtaposition of us talking about it and tackling it as sisters.
Yeah.
With these things that are heavy and big, and everybody is going to have a different probably pulse point on the topics that we're going to have, but they're things that matter to us, and I think they matter to a lot of people, and in different ways.
Absolutely.
So I'm enjoying it so far. What about you?
I'm having a great time.
Yeah.
And you all can't see, we have an amazing crew and group of people that is helping us pull this together. And it's beautiful to see all of their faces. So you can't see them, but we are so grateful for all of them. But yeah, I'm having a great time. We talk. So we'll get on the phone and talk for hours. Now, we may not talk, every week or every month, but when we talk, I know you have to budget about 1:45, maybe 2,
at least,
for the discussions. And They are heart discussions. They are, as you talk, sister discussions. We talk from our about really edifying, I think, each of our souls, and cheering each other on, and just giving each other space to be whatever it is. And I think even for this conversation for us, that's one of the goals, is that the women that are listening on the other side, and hopefully men as well, but I know we both have a special place in our heart for women, that they will understand that regardless of your story, regardless of maybe where you've come from, what your experiences have been, there is a space that you can just be who you are and stand in the fullness of who you are. And hopefully by us telling our stories and sharing parts of our journey, we can give some other people a little bit more freedom.
Yes. Yes to all of that.
And agency.
And
Anne's word is
agency.
agency.
Agency. We are
Give
all
people
about agency.
Yep. So I love that we are coming together to have conversations around what it means to be a Black woman and what our Black woman experience is. The reality is Black women are not a monolith. We are not homogenous. We are not a stereotype or one way. And understanding, fully who you are, what your experience has been, and how that then informs, how we show up. Yes. There's also a lot of discussion around how other people see us.
Yes.
And the judgments that they make and the assumptions that they may make just based on what they see. And how do you navigate all of that? How do you navigate, who you are and what your experience has been juxtaposed, to how people may either judge you or perceive you. So we discussed kind of expanding on our stories a little bit, but really talking about what it means to be Black women. And you and I have had very different experiences as Black women. So do you want to start or you want me to start?
Why don't you start and then we'll go to me.
You want me to start?
Yeah.
Of course you do. Of course you want me to start.
You want me to start? I mean, I'm happy to. It doesn't, listen.
I'll start.
Okay.
Because your story is a little heavier.
Yes,
So
it's a little different.
So my experience is, and I talked about this a little bit in one of the other episodes, but I was born in Los Angeles and raised in Oakland. I grew up in the Oakland Hills, which is western Oakland on the kind of border of Oakland and Berkeley. I went to a predominantly white private elementary school. I was always in my class, I was one of, 5 Black children, maybe one of 3 Black children. And the fact that I remember that and know that just says something, right, about the juxtaposition of, my experience in that greater context. But I grew up going to the equivalent of a PWI, right? Like all of my schooling experience.
A predominantly white institution.
Predominantly white institution, for those who may not know. Mm-hmm. And then, I shared that my parents got divorced, but at some point, I moved from West Oakland to East Oakland. I lived in East Oakland maybe about a year. And I spent weekends in East Oakland because my godmother lived there. But predominantly, West Oakland to a year in East Oakland. And then in the 6th grade, when my mother had to go to an executive development program as she was climbing the ladder at Xerox, I went to live with my father in Orange County. So I lived in Orange County for a year or so and then lived with my mom in Orange County. And then I moved to Miami. So once my mom got to the place where she was still ascending very quickly, but needed help, she was a single mom, needed help, decided to move home, and that was Florida. Going to Florida was a real challenge for me because I was a West Coast girl. Yeah. I had a West Coast accent. I had a West Coast, I want to say skin tone, but that's probably not necessarily appropriate. But I had I looked a certain way. My skin was a certain color. I spoke a certain way. My hair moved a certain way. And because of that, or at least in my perception because of that, there was a lot of lack of acceptance when I got to Florida. People wanted to fight me. I remember very vividly in high school, middle school, and middle school in particular, that girls wanted to fight me for really no reason. So a lot of it was because of the way that I spoke. They would make fun of the way that I spoke. They would make fun of the way that my hair bounced, the way that my hair moved. And then people who hear, well, you grew up in Oakland, like, you just need to, you know,
Right.
you want to rumble, let's rumble.
Right.
But that's not how I grew up. My mother taught me to use my words. She was like, if you get into a situation, if you can talk yourself out of it, you talk yourself out of it. Because she had grown up in South Miami. She had grown up in a culture where, you know, maybe she had to defend herself, and she had brothers and sisters. I'm the oldest of two. But she taught me, don't fight. You focus on your education. If you get into a situation, talk yourself out of it and keep moving. And so that's what I did. So I never had a fight. I think I had one fight in like high school. But my point is that, you know, people thought something because I was from Oakland. They thought something because of, you know, growing up. And I had to come to terms with being in Miami. I went to a high school that was probably a third Black, a third Hispanic, and a third Caucasian, third white. But feeling like I had a place, like I had a home, feeling accepted, feeling okay in my experience. You know, often, you know, again, juxtaposing my experience with other experiences. I didn't even realize when I lived in Orange County where I lived. I didn't realize the level of affluence even that surrounded me. I didn't realize growing up in the Western Hills of Oakland, the affluence that surrounded me. And then my mother would ask me questions like, why do you always want the most expensive thing? Well, my dad, when I was 5 years old, there were Porsches sitting in the
You had seen.
in the driveway. He had Corvettes and Porsches, and I remember he had a BMW when they first came out. And I'm not saying that to brag. I'm saying that's what he had. My mom had a Toyota Corolla, and then I remember when she got a Mercedes, when she got her job at Xerox. So I didn't know. I didn't know, you know, what I was growing up in and so I think there was a perception around you grew up in Oakland, you were born in Los Angeles, you grew up in Oakland, like there's a way that you're supposed to show up. But I was not ridiculed, but set aside maybe for the way that I did show up. And that caused me at times to really question the validity maybe of who I was. And so I had to fight through even building relationships and making relationships. And so I tend to connect with people one-on-one very deeply, but I don't spend a lot of time in a lot of circles because, you know, it's just a lot to try to navigate and to try to explain and for people to get to know you. So that term of being guarded was certainly something that I carried through. But my lesson has, you know, as I have taken the lessons, I think, from this concept of what it means to be Black, my story and my experience is just as much a Black story and experience as anyone else's. As my grandmother who grew up in South Miami, my mom who went to Carver High School, my brother who lived with us and then lived with my dad for a while back in California, you know, my godparents who have become, you know, very wealthy, and it's all the Black experience, right? And so I have come to, for a while, people would ask me, where are you from? They'd be like, well, it depends on where you know me from. So if you knew me at Florida A&M, you thought I was from Miami. Because being from Miami, oh, you from the bottom.
Right.
That brought all kinds of things with it. And so that's my story. And I have come to embrace my story. I love where I've come from. And I am excited about the fact that I can now stand very, very strongly in who I am and help educate people around what it means for Taydra to be who she is.
I love that. You know, it's, I mean, there's a lot going through my mind as you were telling that story, which I know the story. And I know where you're from and how you've moved around. But just the spirit in which each time you moved, you had to replant yourself, and you're not only physically replanting yourself in that space, you're spiritually, mentally, and you're connecting to what's in that space at that time.
Yeah.
And that creates such a different context, to your point, around people's assumptions of where you're from, where you just showed up on the scene, what's your story, all of that. And how at the time, I'm sure it felt very jolting and jarring and even frustrating, I would imagine. But think about the worldview that it's given you now.
Sure.
And your ability to walk into a lot of spaces and be able to see the different aspects of being the Black woman that you are and the strong Black woman that you are, whether you are Little Miss Bookworm, using your words, or whether you are, I got the Miami in me, or whatever the version is. So you can be all of those things and still be Taydra, at the core. And that's I think that's also, I'm sure at the time it didn't feel like a gift, but it is a gift. And it's not to say anything about those who grow up in the same place and amongst the same community, because you get different things from that. You get a certain stability and some other things, but the ability for you to move through all of these spaces and find sisterhood, by the way, in every one of these spaces. Maybe in a different way, maybe in a different context, but you found sisterhood in that. And that's
very
powerful.
much so. And I'll just say this before we talk about your story. There is a balance, because I've learned to move through spaces, and I can move through neighborhoods, communities, relationships. And my orientation, though, growing up was, or maybe as I got older, my orientation was, at some point this is going to end. At some point. And so moving on is very easy for me. Moving on from a job, from a city, it's like, oh, okay, it's run its course. Now we're going to move to the next thing. And what I've had to learn in my experience is how to bridge to where I've moved from.
Yeah, I get that.
And I didn't know that earlier in my experience. I didn't know how to bridge. I didn't even know that the bridge was required. So I would leave places as though I didn't have to come back.
Yeah.
And especially when you are climbing the corporate ladder,
Yes.
how you leave is equally as important as how you come. So even more important in some instances, because the circle is so small that at some point you're going to circle back to someone, right? But I didn't know that early in my career. So I'm just, okay, I'm moving on to the next thing.
Deuces.
Deuces. But learning how to value and nurture relationships beyond the barrier or the that immediate environment is something that was something I definitely had to learn. So as I sit here with you, and you've got people who knew you in the third grade, who are helping with bringing, projects to life. I have a few of those connections, but not many. Most of my connections are from college. I have a few from high school, but mostly college and beyond. And so I would just say that the balance is, learning how to move on and how to show up in lots of spaces, but also then having to really ensure that I'm intentional about connection.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that as I move, I'm taking the right people and circle and sisterhood with me. And so that's probably been one of my biggest lessons so far. What about you?
Well, okay. So me.
This is good. This is so good.
So, when we were planning to say, just content-wise, things that we wanted to talk about, this was one of those spaces I was like, I don't know how deep I want to go into this, because, the reality is there were moments about this that were hurtful, frankly, growing up. So, I talked about being biracial, physically, mother white, father Black. But I've always thought of myself as a Black woman, right? So this whole idea of like living the Black experience is me. And some might say like, well, what does that really mean, Anne? What does it mean to live the Black woman experience? And it's not the like obvious things. It's not like, okay, what do you cook in the kitchen, and what kind of potato salad do you bring and all that. We're not talking about none of that. That's all. Those are common things in our culture that certainly we joke about and we talk about. But there's a certain, I don't even know what the right word is. There's a certain way that we see ourselves as women in the world. And it probably comes from our roots all the way back to slavery. I can, certainly both of us, I'm sure, can trace or at least know some tracings of, the impact of slavery on us. But how the role of the woman and how we take care of things. We make things out of nothing. We activate when things aren't going right. And we also have an understanding amongst us as women that transcend the men in our lives or the children in our lives. But there's that interconnected bond. And I've always felt that, right? And I have it, like I expect it, I'm probably to a certain degree. And so the piece about my story, when we were talking about this, that I really started to grapple with was because I am biracial and I am very fair-skinned. Y'all can see that, right, in the camera. Right, obvious. Captain Obvious right here. And I'm hitting the mic. But yeah, light-skinned, and so they used to call me light bright. But they also, because I grew up in Detroit, and it is predominantly Black, and everywhere I went was predominantly Black, they called me a variety of derogatory names for white people. Cracker. Sometimes I got Oreo, Oreo was just weird to me, but, and people have been, like, other folks have been called Oreo for different reasons.
Yeah.
But Oreo, I even got some really stuff like because growing up in the 70s from like the Jeffersons, George Jefferson, Archie Bunker, like all of that, like those words that they used to call white people. And so I got called those things in elementary school by my classmates. And I was like, well, wait a minute. Why are y'all calling me these names, these derogatory names for white people?
Right.
Because I'm not white.
Right.
I'm not white. And they were like, and so for me in my mind, I couldn't understand it. Like I could not grasp it. And what I realized was it was less about the fact that they knew my mother was white or that I was, mixed or, biracial. It was the complexion of my skin because I was lighter than everybody. So I didn't look Black to them. And so but it was that part was confusing to me. What wasn't confusing to me was that I was Black.
Yeah.
What was confusing to me is that other Black folks were calling me white.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, wait a minute, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
And so I became, I think, at some point in my life, well, first of all, I began to then just put it aside and say, all right, y'all know not what y'all talking about.
Yeah.
Right? Like I just kind of said, all right, whatever. And then, and I will add that I have my sister, we have different fathers, and her father is actually white. So my sister is all white. If you saw her, you'd say she's white. She's clearly white. But we're not that far apart. In fact, this is the funniest statement I ever get in my life. People are like, y'all look just alike. I was like, we do? Really? But they mean features and mannerisms and all that things, but all the things. So this whole idea of Blackness being the experience, but then Blackness and colorism being our skin tone became really pronounced to me. And so much so that I started to realize when I walked into rooms, and oh, by the way, my maiden last name is Sempowski. Sempowski, right? Because that's my mother's Polish background. And I was Ann Sempowski for decades until I got married. And so you walk in Ann Sempowski and the audio visual and all of that is off sync, right? It's like, wait a minute. Okay, wait, but she's Black. She's from Detroit.
Her maiden name is
Sempowski, and she real light. And that was the content. Light bright. Yeah. That's what they call me, light bright. So I think all of those things started to like, okay, I know I'm confusing to
But
everybody.
they called you light bright because it's light bright and doggone near white.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Other people say the other word.
Yeah.
But, I don't.
Well, and it was also, by the way, we might be dating ourselves now, but it was a game back in the day. Light bright,
Light bright was a game.
where you used the little colored lights and
That's
made
true.
little stuff. And so it was really cute. Like it was catchy because we were playing light bright, but they really meant I was light bright. So, though all of those things are like, in the context and the background. And so for me though, I was always like, okay, so at some point I really just started to tune them out. And I said, okay, this is a conversation that is societal.
Yeah.
It is not just Ann.
Yeah.
Right? This is a context of the world.
Yeah.
And the city in which I'm living in and that I grew up in is always home to the world. But it really started to make me kind of pay attention, more so than ever before. And not that I thought I did anything different, but I will tell you that as I got further along, I started to actually be cognizant of. So one of the things I talk about is when I talk to my mother obviously speaks very Caucasian. I don't know the better way to say it. Like she just does, right? Like she's a little 5 foot white woman, right? And in high school, I would be on the phone talking to my friends, talking like we're talking here, doing all the things. And even back then I had an even heavier Detroit, like straight out the Detroit. And then I would flip because she'd be talking to me in the background and I would change the tone. So I would code switch right there on the spot. And my friends would be like, girl, you sound crazy. What are you doing?
Yeah.
But it was so like second nature to me to communicate to her and the way she spoke and then go back to what was really more comfortable to me.
Yeah.
It was not comfortable for me to speak that way to my mother.
Yeah.
And so I had to really kind of figure that out. And I'm not suggesting that just the way people talk is white or black, but there is tonation. There are the way that we put emphasis on certain words, it is different.
Absolutely.
And if you ever listen to my sister, who is white, talk, she could do a whole episode on a podcast with us, by the way, and talk about her experience being a white woman who sounds black.
Yeah.
And that's what people say to her. That is the quote.
Yeah.
If you heard only her voice and then you saw her, you'd be like, that is not the same person. Because that's what she grew up around, just us in our dialect and the way that we talk. So I say all this to say that at some point in my journey, I do think there was a moment where I had to really separate out, was I going to try to get validation? So when we were talking about external validation, was I going to be validated by the Black community? Even though there were these folks who have said, you know what, you ain't quite Black.
Yeah.
You sort of Black.
Yeah.
And, a lot of people will say, like growing up in Detroit, they'd be like, you got any Black in you, you Black. But out in the world, that is not true. And so I feel incredibly fortunate that I grew up in Detroit where I had that kind of broader context. I'm not talking about the elementary school context, but the broader context that embraced me and said, okay, you are part of our community, but the outer world, it's not the same. And it hasn't been the same. And that experience hasn't been the same. So I think this whole idea of what does it mean to be Black is really deep.
Yeah.
And I don't think we always think about it. And I think we are quick to look at somebody or hear their name or hear their voice
And make a judgment.
You're not Black.
Yeah.
Or you're not Black enough.
Yeah.
We had the joke, I'm gonna take your Black card,
Yeah.
if you do something that, all those things. And again, it's all in good fun and good fodder. But I think the message that I realize now is that it can be incredibly impactful on a person's life. And so I've always been conscious about how I think about race. Because by the way, race is a social construct. So at the end of the day, we could go all the way back and where we all came from and all the things, right? But it's a social construct of which we've embraced and either been forced into and or embraced, either way. And so this whole idea about what does it mean to be Black is very different. And so how that then translates into the corporate world is a whole nother level.
Yeah.
Because I can walk into spaces and people don't see me right away as a Black woman. And so maybe they don't have certain judgments or perceptions about Black women. And so I realize that, but I also have been very conscious that when I walk into those spaces, I am a Black woman. I'm gonna show up as a Black woman and I'll bring more Black women with me. So like for me, all of that just gives me access that maybe I don't have that initial judgment right off, or at least a little confusion. But then I'm like, okay, now I can get in here and be an operative and figure this out. Like, how can we do more of that? Because at the end of the day, back in the day when I had to check boxes on surveys, censuses, whatever, and people were like, well, did you check Black and did you check white? No, I only checked one box in my life. And it's not that I'm denying my mother or, anything about that, but I only check one box because I consider myself Black. And so it's a very interesting context for me to walk through this world and then to go do some of the things that I've done, which we could talk about, go and run Ebony Magazine and all the things that come with that. But those are some of the different choices and spaces that I have opted to go into. But I always am cognizant of it, and it's a thing, and it's especially a thing for women.
Yeah. Wow.
It's real.
Wow.
It's real.
Really, really powerful, your experience. There's so many things as you were talking that were going through my mind. But I thought about, as you talked about colorism, as you talked about your experience and what people called you, I also started to think about when you said, are you Black enough? And then I think on the other side of the spectrum is it, are you too Black? So my father's mother is probably the same complexion as you, or maybe a little bit lighter. My grandmother, my paternal grandmother, passed as white. She worked for the wife of Duncan Hines in Bowling Green, Kentucky. In Kentucky, in the South, when my dad was growing up. And so she was certainly the lightest of our family. My Aunt Reba, my great-grandmother, they were all like your complexion or lighter, fairer. And so, here I am, little caramel girl. I would go hang out with my grandmother in the summers. And you can't see my knees and my elbows now, but my knees and my elbows are a little bit darker than the rest of my body. And I would get in the bathtub and she would get the borax cleaner and a brush and be like, okay, well, just make sure that you scrub your knees and your elbows. And she wasn't asking me to do that out of anything malicious. But the construct, as you talk about, of colorism and race and what it means, that was the thing. So I would get in the bathtub and I scrub my little knees, scrub my little elbows. Had no idea what that meant. Another one, my father grew up in that same household. There would be times growing up where he would just take his fingers and do this.
No, don't wipe your makeup off.
Okay, sorry. But he'd do that and tell me to do it. So my nose would be a little bit thinner. And so I don't share those stories as I'm not saying anything malicious against my dad or my grandmother. I say it though, as we talk about this concept of, what it means to be Black. Are you Black enough? Are you too Black? And certain features that people would associate, for them, that might define your Blackness. So being lighter in certain areas was a good thing, or not having, your nose look so wide or so pronounced was a good thing. And then my name is Taydra. So when I show up in any situation, it's probably 99% that you're gonna know whether, no matter what I sound like, no matter, when you see the name Taydra, you make an assumption. I've never met another Taydra, so I don't know if there's, any others. So this idea of, blackness, too black, not black enough. I know that when I ended up getting married, I was very cognizant, and my husband and I have talked about this. He may not agree as much, but I was very cognizant because my husband's last name was Jackson.
Oh.
I had been working in corporate America for 9 or 10 years. I was known as Taydra Mitchell. But even beyond that, I was like, Taydra Jackson. If I walk into spaces and I'm like, Taydra Jackson, whatever the, right, but whatever the stereotype, whatever the assumption, whatever the perception that you already have because my name is Taydra is now magnified. So I have become the 3-name wonder, like you, Ann Sempowski, then Ward, Taydra Mitchell Jackson, to just give it a little bit of balance, right? And that's tactical, but it's also very strategic. And some people may say, well, you don't need to do that. In these spaces where you're judged on your name, you're judged on, your qualifications, you're judged on how you look. You say, people, you walk in a room and someone sizes you up immediately. It matters. It absolutely matters. And so but
who does it matter to? Let me just ask. I didn't mean to pause you. You were on a roll. But who does it matter to? And what does it matter for?
What you mean? What you talking about, Willis?
Well, you done dated us again. You done took us to different strokes.
What you talking about, Willis?
But really, who does it matter to? Because these are some of the things that aren't said. And that's why I'm asking you this, because you said it very matter-of-factly, it matters. So who does it matter to and for what?
Well, I think depending on the space that you're trying to navigate. So when I was at P&G, I was Taydra Mitchell. I was still Taydra, but I was Taydra Mitchell. When I got to L'Oreal, I was the vice president at Mazzani. I was, like I said, the youngest vice president there. I was a mom. And I was coming into a space where there weren't a lot of Blacks in leadership from a representation perspective. I'm leading a predominantly Black, a multicultural business. And looking at how I show up and how I present to people, I think that there is a weight. There's a weight or a percentage of how you're judged in terms of your name. I moved on to Revlon, and then I moved into a space where I was dealing in private equity and then startup businesses. And for whatever reason, I was more comfortable in those spaces. I was more comfortable dealing with founders and primarily Black women, primarily people in the beauty space, and that there was a familiarity of the people that I was dealing with, that I would not be negatively judged based on those external factors. If I'm spending time and I'm working with Melissa Butler, who's a FAMU grad, so she understands FAMU, she understands the quality that comes out of a historically Black college and institution. We're both Deltas. She understands who I am, what my experience is, and what I bring to the table without explanation, without justification, without caveat. So I can walk into that space and be fully who I am and not worry about whether my name is going to make a difference. If I wanted to be, I don't know, a higher level, if I wanted to walk into a CEO-ship or if I wanted to walk somewhere else, do I think that people would look at my name? I do. Do I think that it is a limiter? Could be.
At least a filter at
a filter. Could be. But I was a chief marketing officer, right? And I was Taydra Mitchell Jackson,
You've done all
chief
the
marketing
things.
officer. But I would be remiss if I didn't. I absolutely think that there is a judgment that happens in spaces where people don't fully understand either the Black experience or don't fully give credit to who you are. And so then all of these things kind of then give them additional ammunition, if you will, that you then have to stand up against. I think it's equal to when people decide to go to an HBCU in some instances versus deciding to go to a PWI. When I walk into an HBCU, I don't have to prove to you that I need to be here. I just get to be, and I get to develop, and I get to, and I'm not taking anything away from you and Duke.
No.
But I get to be who I am. I get the benefit of being nurtured and developed. What I have heard from some friends that have gone to PWIs is you're still at times having to show up, perform in a different way, and maybe there is some what's that called? Suppression, if you will, of being fully who you are. That might not be everyone's experience, but that certainly has been
real.
That certainly has been the experience of. I think it's the same thing.
Yeah.
I think that's the parallel for me in corporate space.
Interesting. I think it's real. I mean, and I think many of us have had experiences that would absolutely support and just what you said. What it was making me think about, though, was our assumptions about the spaces that we walk into. And we both have them from lots of years of experience. And, I talked about how I walk into a space and I can feel when folks are sizing me up. Yeah. But a story that is really now is making me think about is when I did go to become the president and chief operating officer at Ebony and Jet magazine. I actually went there to go run fashion fair cosmetics.
I remember.
And, which was makeup for Black women, right? Which, by the way, never in its history has had a shade that works for me. Okay, so just so that we're all clear. So it is meant for your skin tones, darker, deeper, richer tones. But I went there to run that business. And so when I showed up, we were about everything Black. Black people, Black women, being seen when we were unseen by the major publications, all of that. And when I walked in there, that was immersion in Black culture. And you would think, similar to an HBCU, you show up, you're Black, you're embraced. So then that's where this whole, where are you on the spectrum, not the spectrum, but the color spectrum, but where are you on that whole piece?
Yeah.
Where did you come from? Did you go to a predominantly white institution like I did Duke? People are like, oh, that is the pinnacle of predominantly white institutions. It might be only second to Harvard, only second, although we arguably think we're better than Harvard, but that's neither here nor there. That's a whole nother episode. But that's the pinnacle of it. Yeah. And so they're like, oh, you went to Duke, you're light skinned. Yeah. Oh, we're up in the cafeteria playing bid, whist, and spades.
Come on, cafeteria, bid, whist.
Cafeteria, bid, whist, and spades. All day, not all day, but at lunch, every day. Yeah. So we're like, we are living the Black experience. Yeah. And so, you would think I went there, and I went there because I thought, okay, I'm going to the Mecca. Like, I'm from Detroit. Like, this feels like Detroit to me. It feels like homecoming. But it was not that. And it was not that. I think when you get into corporate environments, it becomes different. Yeah. So I think my point in sharing that story is just unpacking for us. And we're doing it real time amongst us here, by the way, y'all.
I wasn't ready for that question, but that's all right.
I know. We didn't plan that. No, so a lot of us ain't gonna be planned.
That's okay.
But we didn't plan that. But I started to think about how much of this do we actually author and create and assume sometimes. I'm not saying it's not real, because there are real instances. But the assumptions that we might create, and how does that limit us?
Yeah.
do we end up limiting ourselves as Black women
Yeah.
and as Black people by assuming certain environments are going to be more user-friendly, more embracing, more this, more that, better this, better that? Because the reality is, like, we operate in a lot of spaces.
Yeah.
And when we go into these corporations, some of them may be more friendly to us than others, just on basis of their value system.
Sure.
It doesn't have anything to do with whether we're Black, white,
Yeah.
Asian, Puerto Rican, whatever. It's none of that. And so it just may be a value system that says, I value you, Taydra, Mitchell, Jackson, Taydra Jackson, regardless of your background, or I value you, and Sempowski Ward and Sempowski, regardless of your background. That's what I think we really are trying to unlock here, is how do we walk into those spaces and not limit ourselves, recognize it, know how to operate in it, but don't limit ourselves either on the other side.
But I think it's a really good push. I think there's a lot that has to be unlearned.
I agree with that.
There's a lot that has to be unlearned. So if I talk about, again, going back to my childhood and even the experiences that my mother had. So I talked about, the nose and the scrubbing of the skin. I talked about the, being rejected because of, whatever space I had come out of. My mother, growing up, moving through corporate America, talks about being called an Aunt Jemima. My mother's darker skinned than I am. And so she had to deal with the opposite end of the spectrum. She had to deal with being rejected because of her skin color. She had to deal with, people who didn't respect her leadership as she moved into new spaces. And so she talks about the other side of, of the colorism piece. So that's a part of the learning. And all of this is learning, like, okay, so how do I navigate in these spaces and keep the attention where it needs to be, but, maybe keep some of the heat off, right? I think about the fact that people can't say my name, right? And, we've heard now, I love now seeing how people are standing up to folks. And there's that news segment that went viral where the newscaster was like, now how do you say your name? And the person was like, no, you can try it again, sound it out, right? But I grew up with people thinking that my name was just the most exotic name. It's such a simple name, Taydra.
It's very phonetic.
It's exactly how it sounds. So,
which is funny because so is Sempowski. It
yeah,
is exactly
how
as
it
it
sounds, right? But it was just this exotic, and so I think all of these things become signals to you and things that you learn and things that you take in. And then when you move into environments, I'll be honest, I've self-selected I'm sure that there are opportunities, situations, jobs that I have self-selected myself out of. And I'm not unlike other Black women. Even when you look at some of the LinkedIn stats, and I don't have them right here in front of me, but looking at jobs and thinking that our experience and our expertise doesn't match. And so we might be less likely than others to apply for a job that we're usually equally or more qualified for. So I hear what you're saying, but I do think that there's something that we have to unlearn that has been, again, when I talked about, the performance culture, I don't know if it's this episode or another, and our children being steeped in it, there's some things we've been steeped in. The same way that a tea bag is steeped in water and we've been steeped in these idiosyncrasies. We've been steeped in this belief system.
Well, in this construct.
And so when you're steeped in it, you don't automatically know that that's the filter. But if we can, to your point, be cognizant of the filter, then we can make different decisions. And so my decision to leave the consulting world for a bit and to go back into corporate America, that was very intentional. For me, it was unfinished business. For me, it was a conversation I needed to have with myself. You can show up in these spaces, and you are qualified. You're an expert. You can do this, right? So yeah, you've been hanging out, and I made the choice to leave big companies for a while and to consult and to help build women-owned businesses, because I also wanted a different story than my childhood. I wanted to be there when, you know, my daughters came home and all those things. But I was intentional.
Yeah.
And that intentionality was for really me first, right? It was for me first around even that story that you asked, right? So not self-selecting out, but saying, yeah, I have as much of a right to be here as anyone else. So it goes back to, I think, that duality and the stories that we may initially respond to, the way our behavior may initially respond, and then an awareness of that, which then has to lead us to, okay, so what decision am I going to make?
Yeah.
Which fork in this road am I going to take? Am I going to do the thing that's comfortable and known and that maybe I'm thinking people are expecting, or am I going to stand in who I am? And I think that's a decision that we get to make those decisions every day. And I love being able to move in this lane of really standing fully in who I am.
Yeah. Well, I know as we wrap this episode, I am thinking about the idea that you just introduced here around this idea of the filters.
Yeah.
So, there is this piece of what choices do we make, the forks in the road, but the filters and how we actually take filters, we put this filter on and we view the world through that filter. So whether that filter is, this environment is going to be more embracing of me because it knows me.
For sure.
Or this environment is going to size me up because I'm lighter skinned. Or this environment is going to do X, Y, or Z. Bringing consciousness to our filters is the first thing that we can do. Yeah. Because when we're conscious of them, then we can determine, okay, is this a intentional move I'm making?
Right.
Or is this a move I'm making not even being cognizant of why I'm choosing this? Because when we're not cognizant of what we're choosing, we may choose something that doesn't serve us, or we may choose something that ultimately is different than what we thought it was, because we haven't brought a consciousness to how we perceive that moment. And by the way, that can also help us in how we collectively bond and move past colorism and some of the things that become a bit of a wedge even in our own community, because we're putting our filters on whatever that is. So I think this idea around filters is incredibly powerful. And thank you for bringing it to our audience, because we all could benefit from checking our filters all the time. Like, how you got to check your air conditioning filter? Absolutely. Like, is it time to change your filter? Is it time to really rethink your filter? So thank you for bringing that up.
No, thank you. And I think to your point, we get to choose.
We get to choose.
So we have Snapchat filters. We have Instagram filters.
Because you love a good filter.
I love a good filter. I do. But I get to choose.
But you get to choose it.
And I think in this environment and in where we are today, we have to remember that we get to choose.
We get to choose. So thank you for choosing us and spending this time with us. We love you. And we hope that this has been helpful, and we'll be back
for another episode with Ann and Taydra.